bombshell piece of reporting from the Wall Street Journal has Donald Trump spending day 179 of his second presidential term denying to the American people and the world that he wrote a birthday card, an illustration to a dead and disgraced sex trafficker. That note, if indeed written by Donald Trump, could add new depth and texture to our understanding of the common interests that may have united Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein during their years-long friendship. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Jeffrey Epstein's disgraced associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, decided to put together a leather-bound book of letters and notes from associates to give to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday in 2003. The Wall Street Journal reports that these letters or documents were among those examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago. That's according to people who have reviewed the pages. From that report, quote, the letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to have been hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. It isn't clear how the letter with Trump's signature was prepared. Inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, written in the third person. The card reads, quote, voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, the pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. And may every day be another wonderful secret. Let that sink in. Prior to publishing this report, this story, the Wall Street Journal spoke with the president. Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. That denial reads, quote, this is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story, he said. Quote, I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women, he said. It's not my language. It's not my words. Now, we'll stop here for a second and just importantly, as an editorial note, point out that Donald Trump does like to draw. The Hill reports that one of his sketches drew nearly $30,000 at an auction in the year 2017. The Justice Department did not respond to the Wall Street Journal, and the FBI also declined to comment to the Wall Street Journal. The White House has made trying to discredit this Wall Street Journal piece of reporting its top priority. Vice President J.D. Vance posted on X that the story was bull bleep. Donald Trump is now threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal, News Corp, and its owner, Rupert Murdoch. Trump, late last night, directed the Justice Department to release, quote, all pertinent grand jury testimony in the sex trafficking case against Jeffrey Epstein. But releasing grand jury testimony may do little to quell the crisis Donald Trump faces right now, given the agitation from his base and the bipartisan calls now to release all the files, as well as mounting questions about the Justice Department and FBI's handling of the case. In a letter to the Justice Department, ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin, FBI agents assigned to review the Epstein files were told to, quote, flag any documents that mention Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now facing a story he can't kill, and it's where we start today. Washington Post Justice Department reporter Perry Stein is with us. Also joining us, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller is back with us. And the president of Media Matters for America, Angelo Carusone, is here. Tim, you and I have worked on campaigns and worked for politicians. I don't even know if this is true in your case, but I've worked for politicians where the campaign is rocked by a piece of reporting. For George W. Bush, it was some of the reporting about his time in the Texas Air National Guard. I wasn't on the George W. Bush campaign, but there was also a moment for him where his campaign was rocked by a report about a DUI right before the election in 2000. Donald Trump was in some ways rocked by the Access Hollywood tape, but it was a different moment in his political life, and it was a different kind of issue. It was something that he survived politically. This is so different in that the journalism is following the outroar from the base, not trying to lead it. The journalism didn't come first. The outroar from his base came first. And I'm really not sure if that's a good or a bad thing for journalism, but it makes the political scandal for Trump different.
Yeah, it does. And look, what I think about in these sort of situations, Nicole, something that, from back in my PR days, that it is reminiscent of, right, is when your candidate steps in it, says something maybe they shouldn't have. We don't need to pile on the bushes. So I could come up with a couple Jeb examples. We don't need to do it. But what happens is the story gets out of your control, right? Because something that like journalists weren't really looking into, or had quit looking into, or had moved on from, there becomes a feeding frenzy around it. And I think this is what has happened with Donald Trump. And so when you hear Trump and his people push back and say, well, look, I mean, if this was real, this letter was real, Biden would have released it, or the Wall Street Journal would have written about it years ago, or whatever. That's just kind of like not how these things work, right? And when Donald Trump made this critical mistake, the self-own of, we assume it was Donald Trump, I guess it was Pam Bondi that put her name on it, deciding that they were going to announce that they were not going to release or look into the Epstein files anymore. The result was this fervor, as you mentioned, from his own base. And then the result from that is a lot of journalists, I think, naturally looking at this and saying, wait, what? Like, why? Wait, what is underneath this? Why did they make that announcement? And I think this story, and I presume others to come, are the result of that. And I think that he totally misjudged whether his base actually cared about this story or not. They do. And I think that he totally misjudged his exposure to it from his, in his own words, decade-and-a-half long relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And so now you have this gross birthday card out where he's talking about sharing beautiful secrets with a guy whose secret was that he was trafficking underage girls.
And I want to dive back into the actual story because it's one of those stories that you remember for a long time where you were when it flashed, because you stop and you read the whole thing. I read it twice. But just on the miscalculations and the how we got here, Tim, the miscalculation or the blind spot, and I did some reporting on this of my own, may have been either not appreciating the depths to which Bongino and Patel were steeped and invested in the Epstein conspiracy theories and the Epstein issues, or sort of he appeared in the manosphere, but he wasn't of the manosphere, maybe not appreciating that this distrust of institutions and these conspiracies that animate the manosphere, it's not that they liked Trump because they like Trump. They like Trump to the extent that he was adjacent to the conspiracies and that he seemed like a fellow traveler in helping them get to the bottom of them. They didn't like him for his policy positions or his looks.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. And there's a cockiness to Trump. I think there's I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. I think that is part of the blind spot. But another part of the blind spot is, to your point about him not being of this world, he talked about this from time to time, but he didn't care. I mean, obviously he didn't care. He was palling around with Jeffrey Epstein, to borrow a phrase, right? I mean, he knows the people that were going to Jeffrey Epstein's island and parties. Like, this was not something that Donald Trump deeply cared about. It was he used it, to advance his ends, and the people around him really grabbed onto it. And you remember on the campaign trail, for a little while, they were playing that creepy QAnon song, which shows that at least his campaign team recognized that the base was animated by this kind of nexus between conspiracy and reality around elite pedophilia. And so Trump, because that's not hit right, like the tariff stuff, the immigration stuff, Trump feels this like as kind of outer borough talk radio call-in guy, right? Like he at least kind of at some visceral level understands why people care about immigration. I don't think he really does in this case. He was faking it. And to your point, and I think that while in the Fifth Avenue theory, his main base will eventually come back around to him. They might rally around the flag now and just be like, oh, the media and fake news. All of those other folks in the manosphere that we talk about around this, Nicole, they're not. They don't like being played for fools. They're not in the cult. They were with Trump as a matter of convenience. And you're already seeing this. And Shane Gillis, who's a comedian, was on the ESPYs or ESPN last night making fun of him for this. One of those podcasts he went on, Flagrant, those guys put on fake tinfoil hats to like make fun of Trump. Rogan did the same. So he's in deep trouble with that crowd.